And we back, right? Probably. All right, dope. Let's get back to it. I really fucking hate being here because my damn Wi-Fi is on a timer. Like it resets every 24 hours, and right now, it's like this whole week or so, it's been resetting at like this time of night, and it's really fucking irritating because this is when I stream. So yes, it happened to me fucking yesterday too. It's really annoying. It crashed, kinda. Yeah, it's just the Wi-Fi reset because I still live in a fucking hotel.
She had said, she just wanted to protect him. And there was something that she had said a lot of times during her testimony is that she loved him. She thought that this was what love was. And she just essentially never wanted him to get in trouble or anything. And so that's why she kind of protected him as much as she did. She said even after the 2016 hotel incident that he had come to her apartment.
Yeah, that's
She was
because
on
I
the
live in a hotel. Because it's not like mine. You know.
17th floor of this apartment, and this is an important part because we'll talk more about the testimony of why the 17th floor is so important in this. But she had said that Diddy tried to get into her apartment. He was banging on her door, yelling at her front door. She even heard from Diddy's one of his primary assistants, that being Christina Quorum, somebody who's been named in some of the civil lawsuits against him. She said that she had heard.
Right, back to you. This is I guess the third day. I thought yesterday was the first day, but I guess the first day was Monday. So today's the third day. And there's no fucking cameras or audio allowed inside, so this is what we have to deal with. And I'm so upset. I'm so upset about that. But back to you. So I don't know when I got cut off, but like your lady friend or like a friend who you want to be a girlfriend or which one? You can't use girlfriend like that. That threw me off.
From Christina Quorum that day, someone she refers to as
Lady
KK.
friend, gotcha.
And she even spoke with a man named D-Rock who worked security for Sean Combs. She said she even went to D-Rock's house that day, said D-Rock and his wife were there for her, somebody that she even considered a friend. And she said the next time she actually saw Sean.
Those some people being other women.
Considered a friend. And she said the next time she actually saw Sean Combs was at D-Rock's house. And she had went there to Sean's house, or excuse me, she was at D-Rock's house, and then she had later gone to Sean Combs' house, mainly because she had a movie fitting. Because this is also another important part of this testimony, is that she had a movie premiere very shortly after this entire incident, and for the most part, she said she didn't even want to do this particular freak off. She mainly did these freak offs to appease Diddy, to make him happy.
I think she just talked about this
but she said she didn't
too.
even want to do this particular freak off because she didn't want to pump herself with a whole bunch of drugs, because she didn't want to be tired or slouched. This is something that she had worked hard for, and she wanted to kind of enjoy this moment for herself, so she didn't want to do this freak off so it would ruin her premiere. But she went to Sean Combs' house for a movie fitting. Then we in the gallery and the jurors as well too saw an exhibit,
especially since they're going to show like videos of the freak off,
she had sunglasses
allegedly as like part of the evidence for the jury. I want to see it just to see what it is, like for the evidence for myself.
Diddy's bedroom.
But like,
she said she even had to cover up the bruises from this beating by using makeup. She had to cover. She had to use a whole bunch of makeup even on her.
But I guess the Johnny and Amber thing wasn't a federal thing. This is a federal case. Johnny Amber was just a domestic abuse case.
For her black eye, and then we had seen another photo from that red carpet from that premiere where, if you really zoom into it, you could see bruises kind of on her backside. And then we saw another photo, this of Cassie in a green dress. She said this was a dress that she had changed into during this premiere in a popcorn closet of all places at the movie theater, and she had gone to an after party with Diddy. So we saw an exhibit of Diddy on her arm, and they were sitting together at this after party, and you could see a bruise on her leg. She said she had a bruise on her right shin. She also said she had bruises on her thighs. And so we really got an in-depth picture of, one, what had happened at the Intercontinental Hotel from her perspective, but also even the aftermath of just having to kind of cover everything up emotionally, physically, with makeup, and then just go off and act like everything was picture perfect. And so, you know, it was a stark difference from seeing that surveillance video and then seeing a red carpet photo of the two of them together, a photo that we
She's
ourselves
talking
even had
about
in-house,
for the movie premiere.
and just seeing that she appeared happy, but knowing that
Like at the
on her
time
body,
she's talking about, oh,
bunch
she
of
going to the movie
bruises
premiere with all these
given
bruises
to
and
her
shit,
by
having
her
to cover
boyfriend
it
at
up
the
and all
time.
that, and how frequent
as all
that
of
would
this
happen
is
to happen.
playing out in the courtroom, and you have very emotional testimony from Cassie. You have these images, selfies that she took, like with a busted lip. And I know it can be tough to tell, but how does it seem to be playing with the jury?
Well, from the jury's perspective, from what I could see, because it's really kind of hard to see them at all points, but from where I was sitting today, I will say they've kept pretty stone cold throughout this entire testimony, and that's kind of hard to tell, mainly because, you know, I don't know what their reactions are going on inside their head. Even us in the gallery, you know, for the most part, we're kind of, you know, stone-faced, and then when we get outside of the courtroom, and then we're just like, oh my God, that was a lot. So you really don't know what was kind of going through their head, but I will say, you know, from my perspective, from what I could see, I didn't necessarily see anybody getting emotional or wiping away tears, but you definitely could tell that the jurors were laser focused on Cassie and just the line of questioning. There were some glances at Diddy as well too throughout this testimony, but for the most part you couldn't really tell their emotion, so no idea what's actually going on through their heads while they're listening to all of this.
And today there was a lot of talk about the escorts that Cassie says was involved in these freak-off parties, and there were several names that were brought up. What stood out to you with those names that were brought up in court?
Yeah,
There's a
so
lot of
we
people
saw
wanna know.
a lot of photos, a lot of these escorts, and so, for example, we saw just a bunch of back-to-back exhibits. One from a man named Ash. He was hired through this escort service called Cowboys for Angels through this man named Garen, and this was someone who would fly out to Las Vegas, to Ibiza. There was an escort who she didn't know the second name, but she remembered that he was hired by Cowboys for Angels, saw him in New York. There was an escort named Islander, somebody who was hired mostly in Las Vegas, in Los Angeles. There was a man named Tommy, also hired through Cowboys for Angels. This man was used in Miami. Another escort whose name she couldn't remember, used in Los Angeles. An escort named Skylar, hired also by Cowboys for Angels, used in Los Angeles. There is another escort through Cowboys for Angels named Jake, used in Los Angeles as well too. Couldn't remember another escort's name, also booked through Cowboys for Angels, used in Los Angeles. There was a man named Greg, used in Miami. She didn't remember how he was hired, if he was hired through Craigslist or Backpage, and for the most part, if she could remember, it was through Cowboys for Angels. She said that it was through Cowboys for Angels. Another escort whose name she didn't remember, but remembered him from Freak Offs, an escort named Brian, hired as an escort in New York. He was booked through Craigslist. A man named Ben was hired through Cowboys for Angels as well too, through the man named Garrett. He was booked in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and I say all these different cities mainly because that's how frequent they were. She said she did hundreds of these freak-offs, but there was one particular escort that stood out to me, and that's because he's a familiar face. Not because I know this personally, but because this is somebody we've covered so many times here at Law and Crime, and this was an escort named Jonathan. Obviously, I know Jonathan's last name to be Audie. We saw his photo. I remember his face, and he's a big name. Maybe somebody that people didn't kind of click right off the bat, but I definitely did. This was an escort that definitely stood out to me.
How the fuck?
Why? Because he did an interrogation after he was in another incident. I don't think it had anything to do with sex crimes or anything like that. It actually had to do with Trump. And when he was interrogated, he was pretty much saying that he was a sex slave for Sean Combs and Cassie, and nobody at the time believed.
First of all, hold on. That was a crazy time to stop. So your girl's PC blew up playing Doom Dark Ages? That's crazy. I saw someone's PlayStation. I saw like a picture of someone's shit exploded and said something about Doom Dark Age, but I thought that was just like a meme. Like it crashed. Well, yeah, exaggeration, right? But that's still kind of crazy. But also, I remember this. I remember this guy. And yeah, everyone said he was fucking crazy.
Saying that he was a sex slave for Sean Combs and Cassie, and nobody at the time believed him. Everyone thought that this man was just going on a wild, crazy tangent, that he was just saying things out of his behind, but Cassie confirmed today that he was an escort that they had used in these freak-offs. So it seems like from, Jonathan's perspective that he was telling the truth the entire time, and that, while the claims were made years before this case even went to trial, years before Cassie had even filed her lawsuit, people didn't take him seriously. But Cassie herself confirmed today that Jonathan Auty was definitely an escort that they had used.
Are they gonna bring him back into the trial like tomorrow or like next week? So it's like an eight-week trial, right? They could bring him back for another testimony. That
Used previously, and said that she had seen him several times, specifically in Miami, and so that was definitely a name that was brought up that stood out to me. But this is just some of the escorts that they had booked for these freak offs, and Cassie said she had booked them.
And that's why we need to see it happen, because she, like, God bless her, she's even said herself she can't get every detail. That's like, I want to be in there to. Jeez, I'm so mad.
Again, through services like Backpage, through Craigslist, through Cowboys for Angels, and these escorts, essentially, especially the ones that they were more comfortable with, were flown to different places, kind of making this argument, for counts 3 and 5, transportation to engage in prostitution. And so that was one, again, definitely a name that stood out to me. But again, that was just some of the escorts that Cassie
if they bring that guy back specifically, then they'll definitely nail him for the transportation shit.
Yeah,
for damn
and to
sure.
your point, I mean, it just seems like there were so many names just today and locations that were being, that were already being laid out in this testimony that she's having with the prosecution. What is it like to be in the courtroom? The video from the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles, we have all seen it. There's few people, I feel like, in the world that haven't seen that video at this point. But what's it like to be in the room as Sean Combs is there and that video is being played?
So this was a video that, we have seen for a while now, that even being, going back as far as just last year. But then even for jurors, they've been seeing this video essentially every single day since trial, and it's only Wednesday. And so from what I could see just of Diddy's reaction while this video is being played, it seems like this is kind of a point where, anything that had to do with physical abuse, you could kind of tell, and I say kind of like that mainly because, again, I don't want to make assumptions of what's really going on in his mind, but I feel like you could kind of tell this is something that he's ashamed of. Definitely. I think there were points where he kind of, even in between breaks, when the jury's out and stuff like that, he kind of looked at his sons, and he had looked at his associates or friends in the courtroom and just kind of was just like kind of reassuring them that, are they okay? Is he okay? That type of thing. But again, this is a video that he's seen a number of times. And so he didn't have a big emotional reaction to seeing this video played out again in court. But, never know necessarily what is 100% going on in his mind as this video is being played and as all of these allegations and everything is being displayed again out in open court.
And you're one of the few people who have seen Sean Combs since he's been arrested, because he's transported to the courthouse. He's in prison, or in jail, excuse me, for the moment. And just what mannerisms have stood out to you? Because we all know the mogul, we all know Sean Combs and Diddy and all of this, but to see him in this position as a defendant, what mannerisms have stood out to you so far in this trial, just watching how Sean Combs interacts with his attorneys and sits there at the table?
Well, as he's sitting at the table, he looks very differently than when I was covering him during those pre-trial hearings, in that he's not in a jumpsuit anymore. He's not in that MDC issue tan jumpsuit. He's in kind of more of a toned down look.
I'm pretty sure.
Even prior to,
I'm pretty sure I heard something like that.
Normally, prior to his arrest, we see him in designer clothes, we see him in sunglasses, but now it's completely different. We see him very much toned down in neutral colors. For example, today,
yeah, he was dressed in like fucking Cosby yesterday. I don't know why.
He had gray slacks on. The previous day, we have seen him in gray sweater, gray slacks, and even before that, we were seeing him in a navy sweater and navy slacks. And so, for the most part, his mannerisms in the courtroom He is very
I'm
much,
aware of like the
participating
general
in his
story.
own
I'm not
defense.
caught up
He
on
is
anything.
intently
Did something
listening
crazy
to all
happen?
the testimony that's been given. So
Did some
far,
girl
it's just been
sacrifice
Officer
herself
Israel
so he can get
Flores,
out of
as
jail
well
or
as
some shit?
Daniel Phillip, one of the escorts, and then Cassie herself. And for the most part, he is just jotting down notes, handing them off to his attorney, asking questions. There was moments that photos were shown inside the courtroom. He's looking at these photos. He's looking at these exhibits. So from the mannerisms I could tell of him, he's very much so participating in his defense. You know, even during the pretrial hearings, I would notice he would look off into the gallery. He's not doing that this time around. He is very much focused on what is going on with this court case, as again, taking those notes down. But I will say one thing that also stands out to me is that he looks at all the jury members each and every time that they come into this courtroom, which, you know, from my perspective, I can only imagine how intimidating that might feel from theirs. But they don't know Sean Combs to the full extent that maybe we do, because we've been covering this case so often and so much. But you know, Diddy, for the most part, from the mannerisms I could see of him, he definitely is not taking this
yeah, I know about
lightly.
that.
He is definitely paying attention. He's taking this
Definitely heard
process
about that.
very seriously. And
He admitted
it
as
seems
much,
that,
didn't he?
you know,
That wasn't
we
even
expect a
alleged.
lot with this
And that's why he's in
cross-examination of
jail.
Cassie, possibly off of
And then
some of the
people
notes that
did the
Diddy
whole Ted
himself
Bundy
had
thing and
said,
started
because from the defense's
fucking
perspective, they have been chalking this up as
fangirling
kind of
over
a
him.
toxic relationship, a domestic violence issue, that this isn't necessarily sex trafficking or RICO or transportation to engage in prostitution. Obviously, they're defense attorneys, they're defending their client, but for the most part, you know, we kind of know essentially what the defense is, something that Mark Agnifilo had even said, that they're kind of, you know, have had the defense on their shoulders this entire time. They kind of let everybody know their strategy, essentially, and that's discrediting the witnesses, chalking this up to
What
being
jail is
domestic
that, by the
violence,
way?
that
Can you look that up for me?
criminal, and that
I don't know.
these freak-offs were consensual, that Cassie wanted to be there, that she didn't necessarily say no. But
'Cause something
there were
happened to Tory
points in her
Lanez
testimony today
that might
where it was
be
clear that she had said no
Interesting
to
if it's the same
some
jail.
things, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, let's talk about the freak-offs, because some visual evidence is starting to be presented in the courtroom. What were you able to see today? What was shown?
Yeah, so the freak-offs were definitely a major point and a major sticking point throughout her testimony. You know, drugs were talked about during these freak-offs because she essentially did enough drugs to disassociate from her testimony today.
Called
she did
it.
things such as ketamine in the initial part of their relationship. She said she even did opioids. She did Valium and Xanax and GHB and cocaine and marijuana. She drank alcohol. She was taken to sex clubs with Diddy, and essentially, you know, she said there was a lot of times where she just felt objectified, that freak-offs were all that she was good for. She had talked about an incident during her 29th birthday where she just wanted to have a dinner with her friends. She wanted to do karaoke, but Diddy wanted to do a freak-off, and she was pulled away from her friends. Some friends that she actually wanted to be with, and she essentially gave up fighting Diddy and did this freak-off, something that she didn't want to do. Blackmail was talked about, you know, sex videos of her, sexually explicit videos of her, freak-off videos of her. He would mention these to her when he was angry, and she said that this was something that he commonly did. She said that there was one time she dated someone else, and Diddy had threatened to put these videos out, and he did this several times with her, because even throughout their relationship together, there were still points that these two were on and off, away from each
Can't
other.
stand surprised to hear that.
When she would date somebody else, he said that, she said that Diddy would threaten to embarrass her and ruin her by putting out these images. She said she feared for her career, for her family, and her family being her mother and her brother. She said it's horrible and it's disgusting, and she said that he would make her feel like an SLUT. She said she didn't even want to be recorded. There was a point talked about through text messages from July 22nd of 2013 where Cassie was saying, please delete any video out of your phone. You have too many people who have access to your stuff. And she said, and Diddy said, I did, and no iCloud. And I'm paraphrasing here. He later on said, taking an Ambien, good night. As far as the videos themselves, she said that in 2014 that she was hosting a party, and
That
someone said
weather
that they
is
saw a sexually
crazy.
explicit video of her. And so she had called Diddy. He had texted her, I called, pick up. When did he say he saw it? You're going to tell him that this is your life and this is serious. And then said, are you talking to him yet? This being the person who had told her about seeing these videos of her, and said that they had a whole discussion at a restaurant with his security involved. And it was pretty much the security's role in this whole scenario was to intimidate these people about why they were talking about this sexually explicit video. And she said that essentially everyone at this meetup was scared and confused about it. She said that Diddy's bodyguard, Uncle Polly, was there. Her former manager, James Cruz, was there, someone who had worked with Diddy. She had talked about the recoveries of these freak-offs. But I will say, there was a big discussion yesterday just about whether or not these videos or still images would be shown to the gallery, to the general public. So there was a whole issue just yesterday about whether or not we being the public and we being the press that was inside that courtroom and those in the gallery would be able to see these images of the freak-offs, whether they were still images or video images. The judge essentially ruled not to show them to the public, to the gallery, and something that will be under seal whenever they release all these exhibits. And it's mainly because that they didn't want to re-victimize the victims. And so from what what the discussion was today, these images were still shown in court. However, they kind of made a big adjustment to doing that, and that, you know, when the jury was dismissed, they kind of turned the cameras, or excuse me, not the cameras, the computer monitors where these jurors see these exhibits, see these photographs, they turned them a little bit in, mainly so nobody could kind of peek at them through the gallery. Even for the attorneys themselves on both sides, they were given a binder of these images instead of showing them on their computer screens, just so that way nobody could see them. But we got a description of what these photographs looked like just through Cassie's testimony. And so she was asked, you know, do you recognize this individual? And she said that she did. It was an exhibit of the escort Jules, who was in that hotel room during the Intercontinental Hotel incidents, an escort that they had frequently used during freak-offs. And it was a photo from a video of a freak-off. And then Cassie had said that she gave these images over to the government from broken devices that she had, you know, and those included iPads, computers, former phones that she had used but she had kept. And then I could see, even just from sitting in the gallery, Diddy looking at these images. He was looking over Ana Maria Esteveo's shoulders just to kind of take a peek at these images. I couldn't tell much of a reaction that he had just kind of sitting from where I was sitting after he saw these photos. But then there was another photo of Cassie and an escort named Dave in a freak-off. There was another photo of Cassie and an escort named Greg in a freak-off. There was another photo of Cassie on the couch. She had linens on her. The linens were on the floor. She was in high heels. She had water next to her, and she had said that she had used water often during these freak-offs just because of how long these freak-offs were, how dehydrated she would get, mainly from the drug use, that she had to have water near her just to stay hydrated through this. There was another photo shown with Cassie with oil all over her. There were candles around her. There were lube tops around her, and those were just kind of the vivid descriptions that we had seen through her testimony. And again, we didn't see these images ourselves. They're going to be kept under seal, so only the jury and the respective parties are going to be able to see those. But those were just some of the images that they had brought up today as far as the freak-offs go.
You know, Elizabeth, we talked about Cassie's husband being in the courtroom. There's another person who was a partner of Cassie once, who also came up today. That's a name that a lot of people know, and that's the rapper Kid Cudi. Why did his name come up? How does that factor into this?
Oh, shit.
Well, he was referred to as Scott Mescudi in court today, and Cassie even referred to him as Scott throughout her testimony. And so Kid Cudi was something that we had known about for a while, right? He was a name that was brought up in Cassie's civil lawsuit against Diddy that she filed in 2023, or towards the end of 2023, that was settled within a day of her filing, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in just a second. But Kid Cudi was brought up today in testimony, mainly because there was a big issue surrounding just the conflicts that Kid Cudi had with Diddy, and the conflicts being that Diddy allegedly sent people to blow up his car. And so Cassie was testifying that they being Kid Cudi and Cassie dated in 2011. They first started off working together, and they were just friends before they actually started dating. But then when Diddy found out, he actually found out during a freak-off, which was a very surprising part of today's testimony. He said that he was going through her phone and saw an email between Cassie and one of Diddy's staff members named Capricorn Clark. This email was essentially about Cassie getting a toiletry bag. But when Diddy found out about her dating Kid Cudi, she had said that Diddy put a bottle, a wine bottle opener in his finger. So just picture that imagery. You have a kind of a swirly, pointy tip. It's in between. You can kind of see the picture that's kind of painted there. And she had said that he lunged at her, and she just left this freak off. And that was one of the few times she was actually able to leave these freak offs, because for the most part, Diddy had made her stay, according to her. But
That's bananas. So you're so jealous that you're gonna stab her with a corkscrew, probably in her face. That's an insane level of insecurity. As well as, if Kid Cudi was like aware of all this freak out stuff at the time, or like she never told him, and he's finding out like then, like, I remember that email. What the fuck? That'd be crazy.
she said after she had left this freak off, she called Kid Cudi from a burner phone. He had picked her up, and she had had this burner phone just so that way Diddy wouldn't even find out that she was speaking to Kid Cudi in a romantic way, or even dating him. And so she said that Diddy's staff member Capricorn Clark did know about their relationship, and after Cassie met with Capricorn Clark, she went to Diddy's house, and Diddy threatened to release freak-off videos of her, and even threatened Kid Cudi. She said at this point that Diddy even kicked her in the back after that, and then we saw a photo of bruises just on her back from this kick that he had did, according to her. She said after leaving and after this kick to the back, she just wanted to get her stuff from a hotel room, and said that when she returned back to the hotel room, that it was completely destroyed. She said that there was even unflushed fecal matter, if you know what I'm talking about, inside the toilet. She said it was essentially just a mess inside that hotel room. And then she had sent an email actually following up to Cassie's mother. It was CC'd on this email, as well as Capricorn Clark, somebody that had worked for Diddy at around this time frame. So this was December 23rd of 2011, and if you kind of think about that time frame, that's around the holiday times. And she had sent this saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, threats have been made to me that he'll release 2 explicit videos of me. And she had said that threats were made to hurt her as well as Kid Cudi, and that Diddy wouldn't do it himself because he'd be out of the country, kind of insinuating that he had other people to carry out this alleged crime instead. And she said when she went back home, she had shown her mom these bruises on her legs, on her back, and we had seen, again, these photos through exhibits, and this was actually the first time that she had told her mother about the physical abuse she endured throughout her relationship. She didn't necessarily go into full detail about everything that she was enduring throughout her relationship with Diddy, because she said that she was embarrassed to even kind of speak about these freak-offs. But she said that Kid Cudi actually met her in Connecticut and stayed with her around 3 or 4 days around this time frame, and she actually broke it off with Kid Cudi during this time period, mainly because she was nervous just about the threats made by Sean Combs, according to her, to Kid Cudi and herself, and was essentially saying that, you know, she broke things off, then nobody would get hurt. Nothing bad would happen to anybody. Even after this time frame where she broke things off with Kid Cudi, she had went to Arizona to visit Sean Combs, something that she didn't even tell her family about because she thought it would disappoint them. And then even they had a whole meeting, they being Kid Cudi, Diddy, and Cassie herself. They all met together back at Soho House, back in Los Angeles, and Kid Cudi asked about his car, and Diddy said, "What car?" And so essentially there was just there was a meeting that had happened. Diddy had essentially said, "What car?" kind of alluding to the fact that he had nothing to do with it, even though from Cassie's point of view, and even from the text messages and email that we saw, that there were threats that were made, especially after Diddy had found out about their relationship.
She's like, "Ooh, not my shoes."
Kid Cudi was a big focal point, especially during the there were threats that were made, especially after Diddy had found out
"Ooh, not my
about
shoes."
their relationship. And so Kid Cudi was a big focal point, especially during the afternoon, especially during that afternoon portion of her testimony, where, again, we were seeing exhibits of physical abuse. We were seeing emails during this point. We were seeing text messages. And so that was a lot, or that took out a good chunk of today's testimony that kind of went on, maybe I would say maybe an hour or so.
And it seemed like from the updates we were getting on the outside that it was with each anecdote that she was giving, there was a picture that was provided in many cases, whether she had a busted lip or she had a black eye, just kind of detailing the physical abuse that she says that she went through in this relationship. We did learn a little bit about the breakup and how this relationship came to an end. What can you tell us about that?
Yep, and so the breakup, as we know, occurred around 2018, so just a few years ago, honestly. And so around this time, Cassie was saying pretty much that she was abusing drugs during this time frame. She even sought out professional help around 5 or 6 different times while she was in her relationship with Diddy. And so she had essentially said the breakup was initially initiated when she said from her perspective that she had known that Diddy was seeing somebody else throughout the duration of her relationship, and she had said to Diddy that, you know, if I see that you're with this girl again, or if you guys are going to continue doing this, I'm done. And she ended up actually seeing a photo of this unnamed woman and Diddy together, and so she said she was done with the relationship. And even around that time frame, so after she was done with the relationship, she even saw Diddy afterwards. After that, she said that they had had a closure dinner around sometime in 2018, and by this time she was dating someone else. She was dating Alex Fine, somebody who is her now husband. And then I'm mentioning this specific dinner because she had said at the first, you know, Diddy was nice during this dinner. They were having a good time. And then when they got back to her place, he had raped her in the living room, according to her testimony.
What the
fuck? She was crying throughout this experience. She said she was saying no. She said that Diddy's eyes essentially went black, and it was like that he wasn't even there during this, and that he continued to rape her even though she was crying, even though she said no, but still admits that the two were intimate again together even after this alleged rape in 2018. She said that, you know, when she was asked, why did you continue seeing Sean Combs in a sexual manner after this rape, this alleged rape, I need to say, she said that she couldn't just turn her feelings off even after the rape. She said she still had a good vision of who Diddy was as a person, said she couldn't even really hate him. She said that she even stayed in touch with everybody, including, you know, his assistants and security for a number of times. But then, you know, post-breakup, her and Diddy would still check in with one another for a period of time.
She's so emotionally tethered to this guy. It's
2019,
insane.
and I bring up 2019 because Diddy had sent a message to Cassie, a text message to her, saying, "I'll pull up and handle it face to face. No threats and facts that you'll not be threatening me."
He's had so
If I
much
was
control
you,
for
get me
so
money.
long.
Get
It's
me my
like
money.
it's just like
You have two
she doesn't
iPads,
understand a life without him at
too
that
many
point.
iPads full of skeletons. And essentially what Cassie was saying from this particular message was that Diddy was requesting a refund from her for Alex physically training her because, you know, this is something that we had known for a while now, that Diddy had hired Alex Fine to train Cassie during this time, and essentially he just wanted his money back for that because they were dating around this time frame. Now the two are married. They have, you know,
This story is so
three
stressful.
beautiful children together. And then Cassie responded, "Do you want me to tell the truth? Because it's deeper than iPads." And so you could tell.
It seems like
just by
she's
listening
carrying
to the
herself fine
testimony that
now.
This pain goes back years.
You
At
know,
least to
this was also
2019,
years ago.
according to this text messages, where, you know, even there was another text message. This
She's
one
about to
from
have a baby now.
2017,
She's been married for
where,
how long
Cassie
now?
sent to Diddy, "I told you, I think this is all I'm used for," and this she was referring to with Freak Offs. She said, you know, "I didn't leave you. I saved you from beating me up." Now let's fast forward to March of 2023. So just a couple of years ago.
Wow,
but
what a
think
way to
about
talk
that
to a
time up
narcissist.
with Freak Offs, she said, you know, "I didn't leave you. I saved you from beating me up." Now
I saved you from beating me up. I saved you from suffering the shame of beating me up, so you don't feel bad about yourself. That's one way to talk to a narcissist. Let me tell you.
let's fast forward to March of 2023. So
Like, she's
just a couple
learning
of years ago, but think
very
about
slowly,
that time frame. That was a couple
painfully.
months before her lawsuit.
Yeah, she's
The
learning, I
lawsuit that
guess.
she had filed against Sean Combs, and I'll get there in a second. But during this time frame in March of 2023, she had went to rehab for trauma therapy and for drug use.
Oh, well, see, there
and
you go.
she said, and this is where she started getting pretty emotional, is that she didn't want to be alive at that point. And that's a pretty interesting statement for her to make because at this time, you know, us in the public, we had thought she had healed at that point. She was now married to Alex Fine. She already had children at this point, but for her to get on the stand today and say she didn't even want to be alive anymore, it was really gut-wrenching to hear. She said that around this time frame, she was even shooting a music video with an artist. This artist was unnamed. She said that she had really bad flashbacks around this time frame, and to the point where she wanted to unalive herself. She had actually run into traffic, and her husband Alex had to go and get her. And so it was just a very tough point, and it was a pretty hard testimony to listen to, because she is visibly upset. She is crying on the witness stand at this point, but she's keeping her composure together as best as she could. Now, after this suicide attempt, then they started talking about the memoir, and this was something that the defense says was essentially their argument, that these allegations aren't real, that she had just wanted money. She was doing this for the rights of her book, but she had said that she had wrote down this book mainly as trauma therapy for herself, and she said that this therapy for herself was in the form of the book. She said her mom actually helps her with it as far as coming up with
very good
chapters.
form of therapy is writing your shit down.
Wanted to write this book was so that Diddy specifically could read it, so he could understand what he had done to her throughout the duration of their relationship, because she didn't think that he'd ever realized necessarily what he had done to her, and just how excruciating everything that she had went through from her perspective actually was to her. She said that she had carried the shame of doing these freak-offs for years at a time. And she said she did everything for Diddy, but, you know, she felt horrible about herself, that she felt numb because she chose to participate in this. And so this is when they get more into the weeds of the memoir, where she had actually reached out to Diddy once again through the lawyer about the book. She even reached out to Christina Coram, one of Diddy's top assistants, someone she refers to as KK, and asked if Diddy had read the book. But Christina Coram's response, according to Cassie, was that no one took it seriously. And so she said she wanted to be compensated for her time and her pain.
No one took her book seriously?
She said for the rights to her book, she just threw out a number there. She said she threw out a number of $30 million, and she said that was a number she just chose randomly because it was enough to essentially scare Diddy. That is her motivation by putting that number figure down, which is a lot of money. I mean, $30 million, that is a lot of money. That would grab my attention. It still grabs my attention, and I'm nowhere near any of that type of money in my bank account, that's for sure. But she said she didn't receive money for the book rights. However, when it came to the lawsuit, she did say this, and I think this is very big. There was always a discussion about how much she settled her lawsuit for, and she confirmed today it was for $20 million. So no, it wasn't that $30 million figure that, you know, she had used to essentially get Sean Combs' attention, but because of just how these allegations were, and just
$20 million
the reaction
to
of
keep
when
quiet.
She filed her lawsuit, you can understand why, from Diddy's
comes out
perspective
anyway.
at the time, why he settled within the matter of 24 hours, and just look at where we are today just because of that one lawsuit. And so, you know, she had said in court today she had no other pending lawsuits with Sean or Sean Combs or any of his staff members, but she was asked, why are you testifying today? And she said, still tearfully at this point, I can't carry this anymore, the shame and the guilt. What's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. I'm here to do the right thing. She was asked, you know, in the last bit of moments of her questioning, you know, how many freak-offs did you do? And she said hundreds. But then she said, you know, how many freak-offs did you do after the breakup? And she said none. So, you know, it was very hard testimony to listen to. I really, you know, just my perspective, just as a human being, I really kind of felt for her during this testimony. I think a lot of people, for the most part, get caught up in just, you know, the baby oil and just things that to them they perceive as funny and entertainment. But from her perspective, something that, again, doesn't translate the best in these transcripts where we just see words, she was very emotional just about recalling this excruciating time in her life. But thankfully, you know, she came out on top of this, and this is just me speaking candidly. You know, she has the support of her her mother. She has the support of her brother and family, as well as her husband and, of course, her children. And, you know, she is within the third trimester of her pregnancy as well, too. So when she has baby number 3, you know, it seems that, you know, after everything that she's been through, that she is able to kind of just leave this in the past. You know, we don't know what cross-examination is going to look like, right? That is supposed to begin tomorrow morning, and we kind of holding our breath a little bit because we don't know what to expect.
Cross-examination tomorrow.
Will they be delicate with her? Because who wants to, like, you know, ask
I don't
really
think they will.
really hard questions to someone who is visibly pregnant? How could that come across, especially to jurors? You know, where the defense
I don't
doesn't wanna
think they
seem like
will.
they're bullying her. So a lot of us are very much anticipating what
Now
could
that
come
mob
out across,
lawyer ass they
how
got on
they'll be
Diddy's
able to
side.
kind of
No, I
poke
don't think
holes
so.
into her testimony or poke holes into her credibility as something that, you know, it seems like they're going to be going forward as far as their defense strategy goes. But it's been a lot of her testimony within these last 2 days, a lot of things that have been divulged with this testimony. And so we're only kind of getting to the start of it, really, because now we still have the whole entire cross to go into. And so that is going to take, assuming that she even gets off the stand by the end of this week, you know, her testimony can definitely carry all the way to Friday for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how
I could
long
see
the
that
defense
happening
takes,
for
and
sure.
To your point, what approach do they take? Because based off everything we're hearing, everything that you're telling us, I mean, this was
I could definitely
such
see more
emotional,
delays as
raw,
well. More
authentic, it
fucking
seems,
filibustering.
testimony that she's given to
Or
this
more
point.
fucking
How do you
nonsense.
handle that in a
Oh,
way
sorry,
where
we don't have this
if you're a
file.
defense attorney, you know, do
Oh,
you
we
want to go
didn't file
scorched
that?
earth
I
on
thought we
somebody
filed
and really
that
make
back
the
in
jury mad
April.
if they do feel for her? We'll see
Oh,
how
I didn't know we needed
how it all
that
plays
one.
out. I know we're battling the weather elements there outside the courthouse in the Southern District of New York in Manhattan. Law and Crimes Elizabeth Milner, great job covering this case as you will continue on, as this case continues on. Thanks for joining us.
Oh boy.
Thanks, Chris.
So we'll probably be back here again tomorrow for the rest of that, because that's going to be really interesting. But to move on to other rappers that we don't want to be, apparently something happened to Tory Lanez recently. I don't know if this is specifically what it's about. I'd imagine it is, because it was 2 days ago. So, Mr. Sean C., let me know what happened. I'm pretty sure I heard he got like stabbed 14 times or some shit. But there's many